Cadets shoved she down the stairs. Moments later, three generals closed the base, the sound of boots against stone.
Look out below.
Then a scream. A gray uniformed cadet tumbling down the stairs of Legacy, her body hitting granite like muted thunder. The hall froze. And somewhere above, three generals looked down through glass that reflected only one truth. They'd just witnessed something the Academy wasn't ready for. The Westbrook Military Academy was more than a school. It was a shrine to perfection, the kind that left no room for mistakes, weakness, or ghosts of the past. Every portrait on its wall showed men carved from history, hard eyes, sharp jaws, flawless service records. The air itself demanded obedience. Cadet Captain Evan Vance stood near the top of the staircase, every button on his uniform gleaming. His father's name was engraved on one of those brass plaques that lined the hall. His smirk carried that weight, the confidence of someone born to command. Below him, Cadet Morgan Hayes adjusted the strap of her old field pack. The leather was cracked from years of use, mismatched to the new recruit's standard issue. Her posture was straight, her chin level, her eyes unreadable. "Move it, Ghost," Vance said, voice low and venomous. "You're in the way of people who actually belong here." Laughter rippled through the hall. Morgan didn't look back. She took one more step upward, silent. That silence irritated him. It wasn't fear. It was control, the kind that made arrogance feel small. As she stepped onto the next stair, he brushed past her. A shoulder, a boot clip. Just enough. Her foot slipped. The moment stretched like glass about to break. Then the fall. The scrape of cloth, the hollow thuds, the breathless gasp of cadets frozen in shock. Her bag burst open, scattering her few possessions across the steps, a small compass, a tattered photo of an old man in uniform, a folded letter sealed with tape. When she stopped moving, the hall was silent. Vance's smirk faltered, but the damage was done. Morgan rose slowly, blood smudging her cheek. She didn't curse, didn't cry. She simply gathered her things with the care of someone who had done this before, piece by piece, methodical, almost ritualistic. "Cadet Hayes," barked an instructor from down the corridor, his voice echoing like a judgment. "You all right?" "Yes, sir," she said, voice calm, steady, almost mechanical. No injury that compromises duty. Vance shifted uncomfortably, his audience unsure whether to laugh or apologize. But Morgan didn't even glance his way. She just tightened her pack, placed the letter back inside, and resumed her climb, one step at a time, her limp faint but unwavering. In the command deck above, three men watched through the glass. General Thorne, the eldest, leaned forward. "Did you see that?" he murmured. General Pierce adjusted his glasses. "See what?" Cadet took a tumble. "Happens." Thorne's eyes didn't leave the screen. The way she got up. That wasn't a student reaction. That was a soldier's muscle memory. He tapped the monitor. "Get me her file. Full service history. Not the academy version, the military one." Morgan disappeared into the upper hall. But something unseen had shifted. The shove meant to humiliate her had lit a quiet fuse in the most powerful room of the academy. Later that night, Morgan sat alone in her dorm, the room dimly lit by the bluish glow of her data slate. She wasn't watching lectures or drills. She was reading incident reports. Pages of them. Lost cadets, failed missions, accidents dismissed as training errors. Her bunkmate, Clara, peeked over from the top bed. "You should have reported Vance. The instructors would have—" "They wouldn't," Morgan said softly. "You don't report storms for raining," Clara frowned. "Why do you let him treat you like that?" Morgan didn't answer. Instead, she opened the folded letter she always carried. Inside was a single line written in pencil, faded but still legible. "Keep your head down, Em. You fight your wars in silence." It was signed by Sergeant Benjamin Hayes, her father. A knock came at the door. An officer entered, crisp and impersonal. "Cadet Hayes, General Thorne wants to see you immediately." Clara's eyes widened. "A general?" Morgan stood, closed the letter and slid it into her chest pocket. Then I shouldn't keep him waiting. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Down the corridor, the sound of her limp echoed against the marble. Faint, but steady, like the heartbeat of someone who refused to break. The elevator doors opened with a hiss, revealing the top floor of the academy, where walls smelled faintly of leather and old victories. General Thorne stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, his reflection superimposed over the parade grounds below. "Cadet Hayes," he said without turning. Morgan saluted. "Sir," he faced her then. His eyes were sharp but curious, studying her like she was a code he almost recognized. "You've served before." "Yes, sir," her voice was even. "Field medic, Joint Task Force in Kandahar. Discharged after injury. I was cleared for re-entry 2 years ago." Thorne nodded slowly. "Your father, Sergeant Benjamin Hayes, 82nd Airborne. Kia in Kabul, correct?" Morgan's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." Thorne walked around her as if assessing something beyond her record. "You could have stayed out. You had your discharge, your pension. Why come back?" "Because he didn't come home," she said quietly. "And I can't rest while the people who wear this uniform forget what that means." Thorne's gaze lingered on her, heavy with unspoken understanding. "You were pushed today," he said finally. "You could have made a scene. You didn't." Morgan blinked once. "Respect isn't taught by shouting, sir. It's taught by surviving." A faint smile touched his lips. "You remind me of someone I used to know." He handed her a sealed data chip. "Tomorrow's Crucible. You're assigned to Bravo Company. It's stacked against you by design. I want to see what you do when the world turns its back." Morgan took it silently. For a brief second their eyes met, soldier to soldier. And for the first time since arriving, she felt seen. The next morning, cadets crowded the simulation briefing hall, screens flashing tactical maps, grids, weather feeds. The Crucible wasn't a game. It was the Academy's ultimate test, a simulated battlefield that mimicked fear, chaos, and loss. Vance, commanding Alpha Company, strutted before his team. "This is where legends are made. We crush the insurgents, hold the urban sector, and show command how leadership looks." His followers grinned, weapons slung across their backs. Confidence oozed off them like oil. Across the hall, Bravo Company huddled in silence. Their equipment was older, their comms faulty. Morgan sat near the back, studying the tactical layout. Her eyes flicked across weak points in the terrain, areas no one else noticed. An instructor walked by. "Cadet Hayes, still limping?" "Not enough to slow me down, sir," he smirked. "You're on the losing side today." She looked up, expression unreadable. "Someone has to be." Her quiet defiance unsettled him. Vance noticed her from across the room and sneered. "Hey, Ghost, try not to fall again today. The stairs were enough embarrassment for 1 semester." Laughter rippled through Alpha Company, but Morgan didn't react. Her hands remained still on the data slate, eyes distant, already somewhere else planning. In the observation booth, General Thorne stood beside 2 other generals. Watching the cadets prepare, Pierce chuckled. "I still don't get why you care about that girl. She's background noise." Thorne's tone was quiet, deliberate. "Noise can hide signals, General. Sometimes the quiet ones are the only ones still listening." The siren wailed. Lights dimmed to red. The holographic world unfolded. An urban wasteland under heavy rain. Buildings half collapsed. Digital thunder rumbling overhead. The simulation had begun. Vance's Alpha Company surged forward, vehicles roaring. Their armor shimmered under the holographic storm. They were the apex predators of the exercise. Bravo Company scattered, outnumbered, and undersupplied. Their comms crackled with static, orders cutting off mid-sentence. Panic took root fast. Morgan crouched under a broken archway, helmet tilted forward to shield against the simulated rain. Around her, chaos erupted, cadets shouting, gunfire flickering in holographic bursts. Her breathing was slow, measured. Bravo commands down. A cadet yelled through interference. "We've lost contact." Morgan adjusted her wrist pad, pulling up a system map buried beneath the simulation interface. She found a ghost frequency, an unused network left open in the Crucible's design. No one else had noticed. "Bravo units," she whispered into the mic. "Switch to channel Delta 12. Minimal signal, low trace. We move quiet." Static answered. Then one by one, faint acknowledgements blinked in. "Delta 12. Copy. Copy that." Her fingers danced over the controls, eyes calm. She wasn't fighting the simulation. She was rewriting it. From the observation deck, Pierce leaned in. "Who's operating on Delta 12? "That's not an approved frequency." Thorne didn't answer. He simply smiled faintly. The ghost found her whisper. Down in the storm, Morgan began to move, slipping through shadows while the rest of the battlefield raged. A silent specter orchestrating chaos from the ruins. And though no one saw it yet, the tide of the Crucible had just begun to turn. Rain poured through the holographic city, bouncing off broken glass and steel. Bravo Company was supposed to lose, and that was the design. But under Morgan's whispered instructions, the tide began to shift in small, invisible ways. "Squad 2, cut through grid 4D, she murmured over the comm. "That alley's blind on their drone feed. Stay under the signal tower." Each move she called wasn't bravado. It was instinct, drawn from nights in real combat zones where the difference between life and death was one breath. She didn't bark orders. She guided, taught, empowered. Meanwhile, Vance's command post pulsed with confidence. He stood before his digital map, grinning as red enemy signals faded. "Textbook assault," he said proudly. "We'll wrap this by the hour mark," but then his left flank vanished. "What the hell?" He zoomed in. His own vehicles had gone dark, ambushed in an alley he thought was empty. From above, Thorne leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "She's not leading a counterattack," he whispered. "She's dismantling his strategy." Pierce frowned. "Impossible. She's got no intel advantage," Thorne pointed at the monitor. "She doesn't need one. She's reading his pattern like a heartbeat." Morgan watched through the fog, crouched behind debris. Alpha's forces were stronger, faster, better armed, but predictable. Their arrogance was their weakness. She used their pride as cover, their momentum as camouflage. Every step she took was measured. Every word on the comm, precise, deliberate. When the rain stopped, so did the sound of victory. Alpha's advance had stalled. For the first time, Vance realized he wasn't hunting ghosts. He was surrounded by them. By midday, the Crucible was chaos. Vance shouted orders through the static, his voice cracking. "Where's the damn recon team? Someone get me visuals." "Sir, they're offline." "Then bring me another unit." He didn't notice that the room had gone quiet, his own cadets exchanging uneasy glances. Confidence had curdled into fear. Outside, Morgan's scattered teams moved like shadows, cutting lines of supply, using simulated debris as traps. She didn't seek glory. She sought balance. When she finally came face to face with Vance's forward squad, it wasn't dramatic. She emerged from smoke, unarmed, hands raised. "Stand down," she said calmly. "Simulation's over." The cadets hesitated, confused. One of them fired. A blank, but close enough that the recoil echoed like real violence. Morgan dropped, rolled, and hit the override on her wrist pad. The sky erupted in light. Every holographic element flickered, froze, then rebooted. The simulation collapsed. Every system forced into standby. In the observation deck, alarms flared. "What did she just do?" Pierce demanded. Thorne's eyes were steady. "She crashed the Crucible. She hacked the system." "No." Thorne leaned closer to the screen where Morgan stood among frozen soldiers, drenched in rain and silence. She understood it better than its designers. Down on the field, Vance ripped off his headset, face red with fury. "You broke the simulation." Morgan looked up at him, her expression calm. "No, sir. I broke your illusion." Her voice echoed through the silent hall. "War isn't about power. It's about consequence." The simulation ended early. The cadets filed out in tense silence, the usual laughter gone. Rumors spread like wildfire. The Crucible had been stopped by a single cadet, a ghost. Later, in the command hall, the generals gathered behind closed doors. A single hollow feed replayed the last 5 minutes of the exercise, Morgan standing still in the storm, surrounded by frozen holograms, her breath calm. Pierce slammed his hand on the table. She defied protocol. She tampered with the test. Thorne met his anger with quiet resolve. She exposed its flaw. This entire academy teaches control without compassion, strategy without soul. She didn't fail the test. She revealed it. Another general, older and gray, spoke softly. Then what do you suggest? Thorne looked through the window, down at the field where cadets trained like machines. We built soldiers to win wars. She reminded us what it costs. Outside, Morgan walked across the courtyard, limping slightly but upright. Cadets watched her pass, not laughing this time, not mocking. Just silent, thoughtful. Even Vance turned away, his face unreadable. In her hand, she held the old letter. Her father's handwriting blurred slightly under the drizzle. You fight your wars in silence. She smiled faintly. For the first time, she understood what he meant. And far above in the war room, 3 generals made a decision that would shake the academy to its core. Shut it down, Thorne said, until we remember why we built it in the first place. The order spread fast, the base was shutting down. By sunset, whispers filled every hallway. Cadets whispered about the ghost who broke the simulation, the generals who pulled the plug, and the test that had been sacred for 100 years now suspended indefinitely. Instructors called it an audit. The cadets called it the end of an era. Vance stormed through the mess hall, his fury barely contained. She humiliated this academy. You think Command's proud of that? He barked at anyone who'd listen. She made us look weak, but others weren't so sure. A few remembered the quiet courage in Morgan's face and the steadiness that felt right, like a compass in a storm. Morgan, meanwhile, sat on the edge of her bunk reading her father's letter again. Her roommate Clara entered quietly. You're all over the internal feeds, she said. They're calling you a whistleblower. Some even call you a traitor. Morgan smiled faintly. People fear what forces them to see themselves. Outside, the academy's great flag fluttered under gray skies. For the first time, no one knew what came next. The following morning, an officer arrived at Morgan's dorm. Cadet Hayes. Command hearing, 0900 hours. The room fell silent as she rose, adjusted her uniform, and followed him down the corridor. Every step echoed through the marble halls she'd once climbed with blood on her cheek. Inside the hearing chamber sat the 3 generals. The air was thick, not hostile but heavy. Thorne began. Cadet Hayes, you disobeyed orders, accessed restricted networks, and interrupted a billion-dollar training system. Explain yourself. Morgan's voice didn't shake. Sir, I didn't break the system. I revealed what it does to people. It teaches us to win, not to understand what winning costs. Pierce crossed his arms. You're not here to moralize, Cadet. You're here to follow orders. She looked directly at him. With respect, sir, soldiers follow orders. Leaders question them. Silence. Even Thorne's jaw tightened. Pierce leaned forward. Do you have any idea the fallout you caused? Morgan hesitated, then pulled the letter from her pocket. My father died following orders from men who forgot their purpose. I promised myself I'd never let that happen again. Not if I could help it. Thorne exhaled slowly. That's enough, Cadet. But there was something different in his tone. Not reprimand, but grief. Hours later, the generals deliberated in private. Their voices were low but tense. She violated simulation law, Pierce insisted. If we don't punish her, we lose control. Thorne sat in silence for a long moment, watching the rain streak across the glass. You think control built this academy? He finally asked. It was courage. Courage to admit when something was wrong, Pierce scoffed. You're sentimental, Thorne. Maybe, Thorne replied. But I've buried more soldiers than I care to count. And every one of them started in rooms like this, taught that silence was loyalty. He stood. I'm not burying another one. When the door opened again, Morgan was called back in. Thorne faced her directly. Cadet Hayes, the academy will be placed under full review. Effective immediately, Westbrook base is closed. Her lips parted, slightly shocked. Closed, sir? Yes. Until it remembers what kind of people it's supposed to build. Pierce rose angrily. You can't, but Thorne's gaze stopped him cold. I just did. By dawn, Westbrook's gates were sealed. Trucks rolled out carrying archives, equipment, records of decades. The courtyard that once echoed with drill commands now stood quiet, haunted by what had been revealed. Morgan stood at the base of the stairs of legacy, the same steps where she'd fallen days before. Her limp was faint now, but the memory lived in every stone. Vance approached from behind, hands in pockets, expression unreadable. You got what you wanted. You burned the place down. She turned, calm. No, I just turned on the lights. He looked at her for a long time. The arrogance was gone. You ever think maybe you're too calm for all this? She smiled faintly. Someone has to stay calm when everyone else is afraid. He nodded once, quietly. For what it's worth. I was wrong. Morgan didn't reply, but when she began to climb the stairs again, her steps were sure. Not defiant, just certain. Weeks later, General Thorne drove through the empty base one last time. The buildings loomed quiet, their windows dark. He found Morgan outside the shuttered mess hall cleaning the engraved plaque of fallen cadets. You came back, she said softly. Couldn't leave it like this, he replied. You made us remember something we forgot. That strength isn't loud. It's honest. Morgan looked at him. Was closing it the right call? Thorne's voice was steady. A base can reopen. A conscience can't. He placed a small silver insignia in her hand, a single star. Unofficial. For service not recorded. She stared at it, emotion flickering behind her calm exterior. Thank you, sir. He smiled faintly. Don't thank me. You earned it. Months later, the story of the ghost cadet spread beyond the academy. A viral video clip, her silent walk up the stairs after the shove, became a symbol across military networks. Respect isn't taught by shouting. It's taught by surviving. Her words echoed far beyond Westbrook. Years later, new cadets would arrive at a rebuilt base. At the bottom of the stairs of legacy, they'd find a small bronze plaque, dedicated to Cadet Morgan Hayes, who reminded us what honor means. Sometimes, a single fall can change an entire institution. Sometimes, silence can shout louder than any war cry. And sometimes, a ghost can teach the living what it truly means to stand. If you believe strength isn't about how loud you command, but how quietly you endure. Remember Morgan's story. Subscribe, like, and ring the bell for more true tales of quiet courage. Because somewhere out there, another ghost is still standing tall, unseen but unbroken.